Good evening from Raleigh, North Carolina, and welcome to another tropical update video, bringing you this on Wednesday, September the 5th, 2018, recording this shortly after 9:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we had Tropical Storm Gordon make landfall as a high-end tropical storm late last night, right just to the west of the Alabama-Mississippi border down here near Petit Bois and Dauphin Island, I think is where it ended up making its landfall, and now it's a tropical depression. You can see it swirling out here over central Mississippi and western Alabama, and then up here in North Carolina we continue to bake under our 90-degree high temperatures and dew points in the 70s, so pretty uncomfortable there. We won't have any impacts from Gordon, but you can just see it swirling out there. Dumps some heavy rain in this area, but impacts could have been much worse. Storm surge could have been worse, but luckily the storm was so quick moving and was facing some environmental in an environment where it wasn't really favorable to intensify anymore, so that was certainly good, keeping the intensity at bay in terms of that. What we have in front of us is a visible satellite loop of basically the day so far today, and the line coming across is the sunset, and what you're looking at is the Atlantic Basin, and it's really active. The thing that pops out to you is probably Major Hurricane Florence over here, which has really defied the odds and kind of ramped up today into a major hurricane, a Category 4, and that's the next big story. So Gordon has moved inland, is now a depression. We do have some waves out here that bear watching. If I switch over to lower level water vapor here, you can kind of point them out a little bit easier. You can kind of make out the slightest bit of spin in here, and then another wave coming off of the west coast of Africa. Both of these, this would be Tropical Storm Helene, and this would be Isaac, would be the next names on the list if they were to be named, and they're expected to develop into something in the coming days. But the main focus right now is certainly on Hurricane Florence, as it has really ramped up its intensity and continues to track toward the northwest, and we will have to see what its fate is, and we'll talk in this video a little bit about what factors may influence that and what to kind of expect in the coming days. So from that, I'm going to jump over to the National Hurricane Center, and if you're not familiar with this website, you can just go here and you come up into an interface, and you can see Gordon is on land and not as much of a problem anymore, and Florence is the main story. That's what we're concerned with. So we go down, you have your 5-day forecast graphic. These dots stand for M for major hurricane, a Category 3 or above, H for hurricane, and then S would be tropical storm, but that's not on this graphic because it's not going to weaken back to that intensity in the 5-day forecast. Here's Bermuda, here's North Carolina. We're right in this area, so still about a couple thousand miles away, several days out. And this is, the 5-day track. Current sustained winds of 130 miles per hour, tracking to the northwest at a pretty good clip of 13 miles per hour. And minimum pressure is not on here, but I think it was in the 950s, I want to say. Don't quote me on that, I'm not entirely sure, but it's really ramped up today, and it's really defied the odds, battling some environmental conditions that we'll look at in a second that really aren't favorable, but it has continued to intensify and kind of wrap itself up and turn into a concern. So with all that being said, the one thing I want to point out in this graphic is that this is 2 p.m. Monday. So that's still several days away. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 days, 5 days away. And if there were any impacts to the U.S. East Coast anywhere over here, model guidance has it coming in a week from today into the Sunday after that. So several days down the way. So that's something to keep in mind when you're seeing all these forecast images plastered all over social media. That's just not certain. Weather is an uncertain science. Meteorology is an uncertain science. It's our job to quantify the uncertainty and be able to tell you how uncertain we actually are, but that's hard to do when models flip-flop back and forth and the public has access to model data like that, and it can be very easily misconstrued. So from today through Saturday, do me a favor and take all the forecasts you see with a grain of salt, because there is no rhyme or reason that you should be buying into any forecast, canceling beach plans or canceling plans to the coast. No, there's no reason for that, because when it gets to Bermuda, we'll talk. But until it gets to that point, it's forecast several days out. There is no reason that you should be buying into any kind of forecast, because it's just uncertain, and there's just no logical reason why you should buy into a forecast like that, because that solution that you're seeing on that model is about one in, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of possible iterations of possible forecasts. So don't buy into that. I'll tell you something you can do to kind of look at if you want an idea of a track, but just you'll see forecasts, you're going to see a bunch of them, and you're going to have to, ignore them and move on and say, that's one snapshot in time. That's not telling the whole story, and I'm not going to believe that. If you're going to make any official decisions, here's your source. You need to come to the National Hurricane Center. If you want to make any official any official decisions based on National Hurricane Center forecast, these are the products you want to look at. These are the apps you want to look at. These are the experts. They know what they're doing. They've done it for, decades and decades, and they know what they're doing. Listen to them. I'm just a channel getting that information out, but these are the people you want to look at for official information. So getting off my soapbox now, let's take a look at what Hurricane Florence is doing right now. And this is a great website for the Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, up where the Badgers are. And this is a kind of a look at, what's going on currently. So we can overlay a bunch of different products on here. Here's the current track that we were just looking at overlaid. We're out in the ocean at 25 degrees north. In North Carolina here, we're between 35 and 36 degrees north. So we're way up here off the screen and up this way. So, if I get my marker out, well, I've lost that. I'm doing too much here. So if we go back to here, we're way up to the northwest here. So it's still a couple thousand miles away. And we are, not in its immediate path, but it's something to bear watching. So we can overlay a lot of different, parameters here. So the thing I want to look at first is the wind shear. So we have, if you don't know what these numbers mean, this is basically wind shear and knot. So this is wind that is going against the flow of the storm. And anytime you see that red contour here, that means that's bad news for the storm, which is good news for us. Anytime you see those red values, that's really strong wind shear that's going to kind of oppose the storm and kind of work to break it down. And I'll show you a great example of what wind shear can do to the storm in the satellite imagery in just a second in our next slide here, next step in the video. But as you can see, the National Hurricane Center forecast has it weakening down to a Category 3 hurricane, maybe even Category 2 in the coming days, as it kind of continues to go into a more harsh environment and some more wind shear. And we can even look at sea surface temperature. And the plot gets kind of busy here and hard to see, but this is marginally warm water, and it's getting into even warmer water. And to take that a bit further, we can look at the ocean heat content, OHC, and that's kind of the temperature combined in combination with the deepness of that column of warm air. So the deeper the warm air, the brighter the colors are going to show up on this map, and that's what tropical systems really love. They love to tap into that deep column of warm water. When it's shallow water, that's good, but it really likes to get a deep column of water because it can really pull up all of that water vapor and use that to kind of, propel itself. These hurricanes are heat engines. They're engines. They work. They take in the water vapor from the ocean, and then they, send it back out, and that's how the precipitation falls. But they really love that deep column of warm water, and that's what Florence will be going into in the coming days. So it's going into some favorable conditions. It's going into some unfavorable conditions. So that's why the Hurricane Center kind of has it maintaining its current strength and not really blowing up or not really, disintegrating away. It's kind of right and going to be kept at bay intensity-wise and just kind of coast along there. And then there's even some cooler products we can look at that I will quickly show you if I can get this back to none. So this is convergence, and when you're seeing these solid lines here, that's air rushing into the bottom of the storm. So the convergence, if you have two sources of air coming together, it can't go into the ocean, it's got to go up. So that's where the storm is pulling water up, and we can switch over to divergence here, and over the entire system of, the entire overcast of the storm is where all the air is diverging out. So I'll kind of make a connection with this in our next slide as well. It's just a neat visualization to see kind of the air. If you see these solid contours, imagine the air rushing out of your computer screen or your phone screen and rushing out and kind of spreading out. So, the storm has that third dimension coming straight at you. Kind of neat to visualize, but main thing to focus on here is that it is going into more favorable conditions, ocean temperature-wise, but also some wind shear, so it's going to be tough to intensify more. It'll probably maintain its current strength. So here, if I there's a loop. So we have, zoomed in. It's very healthy looking. It's really wrapped up today to defy the odds. But the main thing you can immediately notice is pretty lopsided. And that's exactly what was happening when I was talking about this shear. All these clouds out this way. It's a very bad arrow, but you get the idea. And it's blowing out this way, and there's much more to that side of the system than on the other side. And that's that wind shear kind of skinning the top of the surface. Imagine putting like chocolate icing on a cake that just came out of the oven and the icing just sliding down. It's kind of what's happening. The wind's just kind of sliding along the top overcast of the system and pushing those clouds off to the side. So that's pretty neat to see on the satellite image. But overall, it's continuing on this northwest track. If I follow it with my cursor here, kind of going directly northwest right now, kind of on track. And then it's going to continue to go off in this direction. And where it comes in the next coming days and its intensity is going to be a key forecast, or a key point in the forecast. And that's where I want to get into this. So I was on my soapbox earlier about the deterministic model, or the one snapshot model. So the better alternative to look at is still not a perfect forecast, but it shows you that you can look at ensemble forecast, and these are spaghetti plots. So if you're a fan of sports, if you follow sports and preseason polls, sometimes you'll read that a computer simulation ran this basketball team 10,000 times and it won this many games this season, so we're ranking them this in the preseason polls. It's the same thing for weather. It's taking a set of initial conditions and running it through a bunch of computer simulations and saying these are the possibilities. And this is not an exhaustive list of possibilities. This is just all the members of this kind of suite of models. And this is the European model, which has a better track record, no pun intended, a better track record on tracking the tropical systems. So you can see the consensus. Each of these time points are hours. So, you have 24, 48, up to 120 hours. So that's 5 days. So 5 days out, it really starts to go haywire. It starts to go all over the place. And that's kind of the cutoff that I was saying, that's when you can start looking at forecasts. That's when it's going to kind of have, a bearing on when we need to start, making real preparations. You need to be prepared now. If you're prepared now and nothing happens, you're prepared. If you prepare and something does happen, you're still prepared. So now's the time to prepare when you have the calm weather. It's hot outside, it's muggy, so stay inside, have a family night where you make an emergency preparedness kit. I might throw together a video tomorrow sometime about doing that, just so you're prepared. It's always a good practice to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So we're certainly hoping for the best with this system as it continues to work its way, and a lot of systems are curving out this way. A lot of the ensemble members, I should say, are curving out back to sea. Some are taking it closer to the U.S. coast. Some are making a direct landfall. Some have some monster system that's past any theoretical maximum intensity that the storm could achieve. So that's bogus itself. But the solutions all over the place. You're going to see a bunch of different solutions, and that's why you have to put on your glasses. You have to put on your lenses and say, I like to call them my BS lenses. If I see a forecast that is just completely BS, completely, off kilter, off of, doesn't make any sense, you have to know what you're looking at, know where you're getting your source from. National Hurricane Center, your local TV stations, and your National Weather Service offices are where you can trust information from. I'm a channel for that information. I would love to answer your questions, but I'm going to direct you to the National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center because they are the experts. They're the pros. They have the answers. So, be careful where you're getting information from. I've seen journalism and pieces of journalism over the past couple of days that have been hyping up the storm, saying it's going to be some catastrophic storm in New York City and all kinds of things. That's nonsense. And it's really something we don't need when we're trying to deal with a life-threatening situation that it could be for some people. When Mother Nature always wins. Remember that too. Keep that in the back of your head. So hopefully this stays away from the coast, but these are just some ensemble members, showing what could happen. And I did have another slide, but it looks like I'm running out of time. So I'm just going to, I'm running out of time on my broadcast little queue here. I have 15 minutes of recording time. So the main thing is just there's agreement through 5 days, but then it gets kind of crazy. Tomorrow at this time we'll have a little bit more agreement, and then 2 days from now we'll have more agreement after that. So it's a waiting game. You have to wait and monitor the storm as it continues to go. The intensity of Florence, when it gets near that Bermuda area, the intensity is key because a bigger storm tends to move northward a little bit faster. Weaker storms might be pushed a little more by a trough. It's all going to depend on the upper air pattern over the continental United States as well. So there's so many factors playing into the forecast, and we have to wait and see what, the setup over us is going to ultimately dictate what happens to Hurricane Florence. So that's something we have to watch for the coming days, and that's something that we're going to have to stay tuned to. And certainly something I will be sharing information on. You can follow me on Twitter at AndrewWXCenter. Shoot me a message on Facebook. You can comment on this YouTube video. Email me at andrewswxcenter@gmail.com. Whatever way you'd like to get in touch with me. and I will do my best to answer your questions. But I will plan to make another video tomorrow as we continue tracking Florence and see where its eventual fate leads us. But for now, stay safe and have a great night, and take care.